The eighth and final video lecture of the Video Lecture 1 series is Atmospheric Function. What does the atmosphere do for us as human beings? Once again, if the atmosphere was not there, if it was not above us and around us, we would have to be walking around in spaceman gear, or spacewoman gear. And so fortunately, because of the atmosphere, what it does for us, we don't have to do that. Now we would call our good friend the electromagnetic spectrum in its individual parts. Of course, on the left-hand side, we're going to have our more harmful to us as human beings, and so we think about X-rays. The idea is it's so energetic that it can actually those rays can pass through our skin or our soft muscular tissue to see the inside and see the bone, which it obviously can't go through. UV rays, we know that these are harmful for skin cancers and possible genetic mutations. And so those on the left-hand side are obviously more harmful. And so we're going to look at the atmosphere as a filter. And down here in the troposphere, plants and animals are fortunately protected by Earth's atmosphere. So if you think about the shortwave energy, that's key is the ionosphere, which we're getting ready to talk about. The ionosphere does a good job of filtering out as the absorption of those gas particles in the upper level are absorbed and filtered out. Then we go down to the ozonosphere, and that's where we get the ultraviolet rays. They're not filtered out in the ionosphere. Instead, they're filtered out down in the ozonosphere. And so the key is the ozonosphere does a good job of filtering out the UV rays to prevent them, which are still rather shortwave in nature, from harming human beings actually on the surface. And so one of the things that you're starting to notice, as we'll talk about in the following examples, is the fact that the ozone, it is decreasing. And so the key there, that as it decreases, it allows more UV rays to reach the surface. And we all know this. If we go to the beach, the reason why we're putting on sunblock is to prevent the UV rays from coming into contact with our skin. Here is the Ionosphere region, which is from 31 to 300 miles above Earth's surface. The ionosphere absorbs cosmic, gamma, X, and some UV rays. And so part of this absorption, the atoms become positively charged ions, thus the name, the ionosphere. And so these charged ions, especially of oxygen and nitrogen, keep in mind if we go back to the heterosphere, where do we find oxygen and nitrogen? They give off light to generate the auroras. And so there's something called the auroras, some of the famous ones, the aurora borealis, and these are found in this layer of the atmosphere. Here we have the auroras, and so these are typically seen more poleward. You have to be close to the poles to see them, but these are found up in the ionosphere. So these are those positively charged ions that actually give off light, which we can see here. Here we have another picture from the International Space Station. This gives a good perspective, kind of the side view of where the auroras are found. And so this is good, and I think, a good way to showcase that they're found up in the upper levels of the atmosphere, up here in the ionosphere. That green glob that you see in the ionosphere is my interpretation or my drawing of the auroras. The ozonosphere, we see that also overlaps with the stratosphere. And so the ozonosphere, the only difference between it and the stratosphere is the ozonosphere is a way to interpret function of the atmosphere, where stratosphere focuses in on temperature. And so the ozonosphere is not the troposphere. Very important we get that. They are not the same. Ozonosphere and troposphere are two different layers. The ozonosphere is also known as the ozone layer, and this is a part of the stratosphere. And what happens is ozone, which is denoted as O3, absorbs UV energy and converts it to heat energy. Go back to the stratosphere, that explains why the temperature goes up in this layer of the atmosphere. And so it very much acts like a filter. And so what it does is it helps to filter out the UV rays. Where the ionosphere helps to filter out those even shorter wave rays, the ozonosphere helps to filter out UV rays. And so we think about the ozonosphere. One of the things that's happening is problems in terms of its levels are dropping, especially over the poles. Now, why is that a problem over the poles? Is that it's now allowing more UV rays to come in contact with ice sheets. And so that's one key concern. Another key concern, a little closer to home, is the fact that cancer rates are increasing. Also, sunburn rates are increasing. So this isn't a deal where it's because people are being less intelligent about putting on sunblock. No, this is just stuff that's just occurring at increasing rates that's also corresponding to the dropping of the levels of ozone in our atmosphere. And the reasons for this are chlorofluorocarbons, CFCs, and CFCs are used in in industry. In CFCs, there's two main areas we can find culprits of CFCs are air conditioners and refrigerators. And one of the problems we're going to talk about later in the semester is the fact that places that are quite tropical, places, for instance, the southeast United States, other places of the world, India, much of China, much of Africa, these are all places that are seeing increasing populations, but also more people with incomes where they could afford air conditioners and refrigeration. Also, obviously need it being located in tropical areas. And so this is going to become an increasing concern as more and more people are using chlorofluorocarbons in their everyday lives. Throughout this year, we're going to look at environmental change and look at different ways in which we can identify change. And so here's the ozone layer. We're looking right now down at Antarctica. And so Antarctica, we're kind of looking at the South Pole from our perspective. And so here's a before and after in 2009 showing the Antarctic and the depletion of the ozone.